Nigerian Shippers Council, it's the chip that fits the equation in shipping. Shipping is represented mainly by, three interests: those who have the ships, those who have the ports, and then those who have the cargo. So Nigerian Shippers Council and the other Shippers Council all over the world was set up to take interest of cargo. Cargo being, the most important part of the equation, because you wouldn't have ships without cargo. Would you have ports without cargo? So cargo is central. Cargo is the, primary source of movement, and everything revolves around the cargo. But cargo interest is the one that was least represented, and there was therefore no balance. Neither was there equilibrium, and so the World Bank, and the United Nations, decided to encourage the formation of shippers councils all over the world as intervention, structure, so that the interests of cargo will be represented. And so there have been shippers councils since 1978, and the shippers council in Africa, and in fact in Britain and all over the world. Their main function is to make sure that the providers of shipping service provide this service efficiently and also, expeditiously. So Shippers Council represent a very important segment in cargo delivery. The functions of Nigerian Shippers Council became, prominent with the Buhari administration, simply because this administration lay emphasis on infrastructure. If you look at the last budget, the transport sector is the second highest, beneficiary of the budget, which means we have to align transport to the economy. Transport all over the world, drives a country's economy, and Nigeria is, of course, not an exception. And the idea is to have to fill the gap or the deficit, in infrastructure, and it's a lot. We need to have modern transport infrastructure if we want an efficient economy. And I think more than any other, administration, the Buhari administration addresses these issues squarely. The administration has not been, discouraged by the large deficit, which runs into billions of dollars. So what do we do is to look at the efficiency, of all transport operators. Nigerian Shippers Council is the regulator for ports. It's also a trade facilitator. So we are concerned with the efficiency of transport infrastructure. We are concerned with the efficiency and delivery of, transport operators at the ports, and also hinterland connectivity. So we need to measure what are the efficiencies, what are the deficiencies, and we need to bring everybody together so that our ports will be efficient. The ports, in the first call, it determines the efficiency of our not only the transport system but the economy as a whole. Yes, one of the major functions as an economic regulator is, I said, to enhance efficiency, to enhance competition, and to make our ports and the other services internationally inclined or aligned, if you like. Efficiency is very important. The more efficient our ports are, for example, the more we attract cargo. The more we attract cargo, the more revenue the government generates, the more employment, we have, and which means that we are in competition with other ports around, the Central and West African sub-region. And Nigeria is well endowed to be the preferred destination of cargo within that region. And that's what we are trying to do now. Nigerian Shippers Council has entrenched so many systems to make sure that Nigerian ports, become efficient and competitive. And then the alignment is also important so that we have hinterland connection. A port is as good as its hinterland connection. We need cargo to be delivered as soon as possible. That's why Nigerian Shippers Council has developed what is called the inland ports. We have the dry ports, so that it will not only be the seaports. And because the economy need to be opened, the economy need to be stimulated, especially exports, which is the fulcrum of diversification of our economy. We need to bring a port structure as close to the people as possible. And that's what we've done with the dry ports. We have them in Kaduna, for example. The dry port has started, functioning. It was commissioned by the president, and goods are consigned to Kaduna from everywhere in the world. The central bank has recognized and accommodated, the port. The Nigerian custom, is there at the port. So what it means is we are bringing shipping to the doorsteps of the people. One need not to go to Lagos to do some transactions. You can either import or preferably export, goods from Kaduna. Of course, there are one or two things we have to do with the rail, which we are working towards, because rail is also the element, of success at the dry port. So many exporters of ginger, of other agricultural products will be happy, and they have started using the Kaduna, port for export. Export is important. We need to look at, because of the value, it creates throughout the logistic chain, from the farm gate up to the time when the products are exported. We need enhancement. We need to add value. We need to process certain agricultural goods for export. And once we have the dry port, the Kaduna one is the first to be commissioned. We have one in Jos, which is making progress in Funtua. We have one in Isialanga in Abia State. We also have the one in Kano. It's all in progress, and Ibadan. So once we have these dry ports, you will find a situation where our goods are not examined actually at the seaports. The seaports will just be the clearing point, because most of the cargo is actually destined for the hinterland. So you open the hinterland, you open the economy, you generate wealth, and you change and stimulate the economy of the places where these things are situated. What we have, we collaborate. Collaboration is very, very important, especially at the port, because port is amalgamation of so many interests. The port needs more than any other place, and transportation, because transportation is supposed to be intermodal, different modes of transportation. We have the sea, then of course the road, the rail, and even air, and then inland waterways. All this must come together and talk to one another. There must be some integration, so that will bring efficiency. One, you import maybe a car, it goes through many modes of transportation. It will come through the sea, then you put it either by road or by rail, to bring to your destination. So all the important structure, transport structure, must speak to one another. There must be connection, there must be integration, so that we'll have efficiency. And that's what Nigerian Shippers Council is looking at. Of course, multimodal transportation is okay, but what we are ascribing, or what we are encouraging, is intermodal transportation, so that we have what is seamless transport system in Nigeria. Our challenges are challenges of the economy everywhere, of emerging economy in the world. I don't see challenges, I see opportunities. One is to invest maybe in Canada. How much are you going to invest in Canada or Australia? Because everything has been done. But in Nigeria, there are limitless opportunities. And you have a government that supports, investments. And that's why Nigerian Shippers Council is encouraging public-private partnership. Because of competing needs, the government may not have, may not be, technically solvent, to bring funds for development. But the private sector is there. Private sector must come and partner with the government. The idea is government must produce a conducive atmosphere. It must incentivize the private sector. And this is what has been done. Nigerian Shippers Council has showcased the success of public-private partnership, in the dry ports I told you about. We have the truck transit park, which is, extremely important. Now, when you look at all these things, you see that the partnership between the government and the private sector is very, very significant. It's significant in the sense that the private sector will lead because private sector has something that the government has. Okay, the private sector will have efficiency in its back of its mind. It will have competition at the back of its mind. The government will produce, maybe some asset like land, and when they come together, you will see that an efficient, system is created. And that's what we are doing with the dry ports. That's what we are doing with the truck transit parks and many other amenities in other sectors. And I think Nigerian government, for now, this government has really embraced the public-private partnership. Nigerian Shippers Council is a very important member of the PBEC, the council, that's enabling council for ease of doing business. And let me just start with the ease of doing business. I don't think there is a more beautiful idea than what has been created now in the PBEC. Because PBEC questions, all the agencies, are scrutinized. It's like a peer group, review, okay? Which means that the most important thing is transparency, okay? Then, we open up the system so that investors will come and see that this is what's happening. Accountability of the agencies themselves. Hitherto, agencies sit down like emperors, but now we are the servants and the private sector is the master. And we have to go to this private sector, we have to induce them, we have to entice them and incentivize them to come and participate in what is this collective growth of the economy. Now, Nigeria's economy, the future is so bright. There are so much opportunities of growth, of inclusiveness, there's opportunity of employment, there's opportunity of efficient transport systems, and that is the fulcrum, that is the center where Nigerian Shippers Council, operate. Now, being member of the PBEC, we have encouraged transparency in the transport sector, in the sense that, for example, the shipping companies, they have to transmit a manifest, electronically, well before the ship sails from the port of origin. Now, that is transparency. We have encouraged shipping companies to publish their charges so that everybody could conduct business. A businessman needs predictability, he needs certainty. And that's what Nigerian Shippers Council is doing. Nigerian Shippers Council has also, as most of one of the private sectors, been involved in the setting of standard operating procedure, at the port, so that the processes of port clearance, is streamlined, because we used to have cumbersome, procedure, dwell time of large dwell or long dwell time, of cargo. But once we have this process, you see that cargo is released, as soon as, it arrives at the port, because port is a transit, not, a warehouse. And before you do that kind of thing, you need what you said earlier, the synergy between agencies. Nigerian Shippers Council is working closely with Nigerian Customs Service, Nigerian Ports Authority, NIMASA, NAVDAC, many other agencies, so that we'll create this atmosphere of efficiency. Yes, this goes to building indigenous, capacity for owning and operating ships and other, infrastructure. It is very important that Nigerians, own managed ships. The local content policy of this administration, or the enhancement of that, is well known. We need to own ships. We need to operate ships. And that's why the Ministry of Transportation has set up a committee, the Fleet Implementation Committee, which will work towards establishing the Nigerian fleet or the national carrier, subsequently. But it must be private sector led. And we are working towards, I'm the chairman, or Shippers Council is the chairman of that committee. And we're working, very, very closely with the economic management team under His Excellency, the Vice President. The moment we have this, we'll have, indigenous participation. But it's not just owning ships or operating ships. We need, other associated or ancillary industries like ship repair, ship making, yards. We need the flag administration, to be reformed, and so many other things, so that we have sustainable, national carrier. At Nigerian Shippers Council, we are committed more than ever, to support and actually actualize, the dream of this administration of President Muhammad Buhari, of economic stimulation, economic diversification, employment, inclusiveness, wealth creation, and competitiveness, for that our economy will be in line with the international economy. We share the dream, of this administration, of efficiency. We share the dream of taking this country to a higher pedestal. And we also are actualizing, so many important internationally acknowledged standards, for operation in the transportation system. We share the dream of the Minister of Transportation and of course the President, that this economy, the transportation system will run this economy. Transportation is extremely important. It is even more important to us than oil and gas. With transportation, if it is done right, if we get our act together, transportation will definitely be the honor, of huge resources for the country, and it can finance this budget. So we are aligned with that, and we are always, every day, striving to see that all these things, come to reality.